Who could have imagined that when I brought my baby for her 3-month checkup, I would find my husband holding someone else's child? What are you doing here? Just then, the baby's mother showed up and the situation worsened. My husband didn't even seem remorseful, but in the next moment, an unimaginable truth was revealed. My name is Kate Sutherland, and I just turned 34. I'm a stay-at-home mom. My husband David is 36, 2 years older than me. We're a pretty ordinary family, a stay-at-home wife and a working husband. I was incredibly happy with our life together. Or so I thought. I've come to realize that what I thought was my ideal family was just an illusion. Getting to this point hasn't been easy. I have an older sister named Sarah, who is also 36, the same age as David. Growing up, Sarah was like a celebrity. She stood out, always attracting attention. My grandmother was from Northern Europe, and Sarah inherited her striking features. With her light-colored eyes and hair that shimmered red in the sunlight, Sarah always seemed a little different from the rest of us. She didn't dye her hair or wear colored contacts. It was all natural, and many men were drawn to her. Every guy I dated ended up falling for Sarah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to take your boyfriend again, Kate. But what can I do? They always fall for me. Don't take it personally.
Despite her innocent appearance, Sarah had a dark side. She had no shame about taking my boyfriends, and she did it over and over. Most of those relationships only lasted a month or so.
I don't know why you could date a guy like that. Can you believe he wanted to split the bill on our date?
She would dump them easily, and no matter how much it hurt me, nothing ever seemed to faze her. My parents tried to rein her in. They would tell her to consider my feelings, but it never got through.
Kate, do you know the phrase survival of the fittest? The world works that way. If you were stronger or more determined to hold on to what's yours, I wouldn't have been able to take it from you. It's your fault.
My parents eventually gave up trying to discipline her. Growing up in that environment made me determined to create a fair and loving family of my own when I got married. I decided I only wanted one child, so I could give them all the love and attention they deserved. Once I was out in the world, I minimized my contact with Sarah as much as possible. I met David in my late 20s, and after dating seriously for a while, we got married. Now I'm pregnant, and the little life inside me is growing strong. I thought that our future would be filled with happiness. The first few months of pregnancy were tough. I suffered from morning sickness and lost a lot of weight. Still, I wanted to break the news to my parents in person. I made sure to go back home on a day when Sarah wouldn't be there, as she still lived with my parents. Sarah had married a rebellious-looking guy in her early 20s, but they divorced after 3 months. Since then, she's been living at our parents' home for nearly 10 years. My parents were happy for me to come back and break the news to them. Mom, Dad, I'm pregnant. I don't know how well I'll do, but I'm going to love this baby with everything I have. My parents' eyes filled with tears, overjoyed at the news of becoming grandparents. Despite everything we've been through, they were always there for me, especially when Sarah gave me trouble. I was so happy I could share this news with them while they were still healthy. But as I left their house, I ran into someone I definitely didn't want to see. What are you doing here? The sky grew heavy with clouds, and rain started to fall, dampening everything around us. Sarah stood there with a smirk on her face.
Oh, are you here to announce your pregnancy? I'm good at picking up on these things, you know. Well, congrats!
The rain fell harder, but the tension between us was even heavier. This has nothing to do with you, Sarah. My voice was low, but Sarah didn't flinch.
No need to glare at me like that. I'm not going to steal your baby, okay?
Sarah brushed past me and went into the house. Sarah had always hated the rain, so she probably canceled whatever plans she had. That's just how she is, moving through life on whims and dragging everyone else along. Unlike a cat who can be whimsical without being bothersome, Sarah's whims always caused trouble. A few months later, I was nearing my due date and feeling a bit nervous.
I'll be home late again today, but if anything happens, make sure to go to the hospital.
Okay, be safe. Lately, David's been working late and going out for drinks with his colleagues. Sometimes he doesn't come home until the early morning or even stays out all night. You think he'd be more concerned, considering I'm about to give birth any day now. And every time he comes home, I smell unfamiliar perfume on him. I don't mind perfume in general, but smelling another woman's scent on my husband is a different story.
It's from one of the bar hostesses. We go out drinking to build connections. It's for work.
David's a public servant, so it's not like he needs to butter people up. But he's in competition with his peers, and attending these gatherings gives him an advantage for promotions. If he can get promoted to supervisor, his salary will increase significantly, which would help support our growing family. So, I tolerated it. But did he really need to go out drinking this often to secure his promotion?
Hey, Kate, get me some water.
It was just after midnight when David came stumbling into the bedroom, waking me up. If he had the energy to wake me up for water, he could have easily gotten it himself. But I went and got it for him anyway, because deep down, I was still in love with him. I just hoped that love wouldn't run dry. 4 days before my due date, I woke up feeling like something was wrong. I think my water just broke. I immediately called David, who was at a work party.
I've been drinking, so I can't drive. Just call a cab or something.
And with that, he hung up. I was left staring at my phone in disbelief, the dial tone ringing in my ear. Most husbands would rush home in this situation, but not David. I started to cry, my hands shaking as I scrolled through my phone to call my parents. Before I could dial, my sister-in-law Emma answered.
Kate? What's going on? Why are you calling this late?
I don't know what to do.
Wait, you're pregnant, right? Is it time? Ugh, my brother's probably out drinking again, isn't he? I'll be there in a few minutes. Hang tight.
A few minutes later, Emma pulled up in her big SUV.
I've got clean towels back here. Use them if you need to.
Emma's mom got out of the passenger seat and helped me into the car. She held my hand the entire drive to the hospital. Within 2 hours, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. I never imagined that it wouldn't be my husband, but my sister-in-law and mother-in-law, Emma and Lily, who would be there to support me. They hesitated to hold the baby at first, but I asked them to, and they handled her so gently, like she was the most fragile thing in the world. The next morning, David finally called Emma. I could hear her yelling at him on the phone from across the room.
Are you serious right now, David? Your wife was in labor, and you were out drinking? If Mom and I hadn't been awake, who knows what would have happened? If you're actually sorry, get over here right now and apologize to Kate.
Emma really gave it to him, and it lifted a little of the fog from my heart.
Kate, I'm really sorry for my brother's behavior.
Oh, Emma, it's not your fault. Please, don't worry about it. Honestly, I'm so grateful you and Lily were here for me. I meant to call my own parents, but I accidentally dialed you. But thank goodness you came, and your mom, being a former midwife, I couldn't have asked for more. As I grabbed Emma's hand, her eyes welled up with tears, and she squeezed my hand back.
We're family, Kate. We're the same age, and from now on, let's support each other no matter what.
We turned to look at Emma's mom, who smiled at us with a serene, almost saint-like expression and nodded. I realized how lucky I was to have such a wonderful family. So many people struggle with their in-laws, but I was surrounded by warmth and love. Just as I was reflecting on this, the hospital room door burst open and David finally arrived. Emma and Lily's faces, once calm, suddenly hardened with fury.
David, I already told you over the phone, but seriously, what were you thinking?
Oh, come on. I've been doing all this crappy networking to support our family. You have no idea what it's like. I even told Kate to go to the hospital if anything happened, didn't I? I gave her the advice she needed. I was drunk. I couldn't drive. There was no point in me coming anyway. It's not like I could have done anything.
Was he really saying this? If he was, it wasn't just disappointment I felt anymore. It was something much deeper. Emma, Lily, and David started arguing, and things were getting out of control. A nurse came in to check on me and the baby, and she intervened to stop the fight. A week passed quickly, and both the baby and I were discharged from the hospital in good health. David, however, was grumpy and irritable throughout the entire process.
They won't stop nagging me. It's my business, not theirs. This is between me and Kate. Why do they think they can butt in? That's why I hate Mom and Emma.
He slammed the car door after buckling our daughter into her car seat. David, stop. Just because you're upset doesn't mean you can take it out on our daughter. David's mood worsened even more, and the drive home was filled with tension. By the way, what about this month's household expenses? Our daughter's newborn expenses were adding up, and I realized that David hadn't given me any money for the upcoming month.
Do it yourself. Why should I have to pay for your expenses?
I was stunned. I had quit my job to be a stay-at-home mom at David's insistence. As a stay-at-home mom, I had no income. How was I supposed to cover our living expenses? Sure, I could work if I had to, but what about our newborn daughter? How could she provide for herself? She's entirely dependent on us for her survival. David's attitude had completely changed since our daughter was born. No matter how much I tried to reason with him, He wouldn't budge, and I had to dip into my savings to cover groceries and necessities. I couldn't even enroll my daughter in daycare yet, and the good ones in our area were already full. I could have gone with a sketchier option, but I couldn't bring myself to leave my daughter in a place like that. The non-certified daycares were much more expensive, and even though I looked around, I couldn't find an affordable option. What am I supposed to do? As I got to know David's true nature after childbirth, my thoughts darkened with despair. When my daughter turned 3 months old, I went out for lunch with Emma to clear my mind. Just yesterday, I was trying to nap, and David yelled at me saying,
"Hey, the baby's crying."
"Ah, that's awful. Does he even realize how sleep-deprived you are? It's his child too. He should help." Emma always supported me and listened to my complaints. Even though it didn't solve the root of the problem, venting to someone who understood kept me sane. Directly confronting David had gotten me nowhere, so I had stopped trying. After sharing my frustrations with Emma, I finally started to feel a little better.
"Oh, by the way, how's Sarah doing?"
When Emma mentioned my sister's name out of the blue, my heart skipped a beat. Since that day at my parents' house, I hadn't seen or spoken to Sarah. I was sure she'd heard about my daughter's birth through our parents, and she hadn't reached out to me. "Why do you ask about Sarah?" Emma shrugged and looked away.
"I just ran into her recently, that's all. You know, it's tough having siblings with such twisted personalities."
We both shared a small laugh, acknowledging the complexities of our families. A few days later, I took my daughter for her 3-month checkup and vaccines. Normally, I'd drive to her pediatrician, but they were on vacation, so I decided to take her to a nearby clinic that had just opened. It was a beautiful day, and my daughter was peacefully dozing in her stroller. I felt a rare sense of calm as I walked, a welcome change from the constant tension at home. David still complained a lot, but he occasionally helped with our daughter, albeit reluctantly. I wasn't sure if we had a future together, but for now, I told myself to be patient. As I approached the clinic, I saw David coming out of the entrance. What's he doing here? I was shocked. David was supposed to be at work, but there he was, wearing casual clothes and holding a baby. He could barely tolerate holding our daughter for a few minutes, yet here he was, cradling this child with the tenderness of a father. A cold chill ran down my spine, and before I could stop myself, I called out to him. "What are you doing?" David flinched as if startled by my voice. I had noticed lately that David was sneaking out more often, and now I understood why. The baby he was holding was at the center of it all. "Whose child is this?" David hesitated, but then his demeanor shifted to one of defiance.
"This is my son. Isn't he adorable? I've always wanted a boy, but you just had to go and give me a girl. I didn't want to divorce you while our daughter was still so young, but now that you know, we can get this over with. Let's get a divorce." A shock ran through my body. It wasn't the fact that David was asking for a divorce that stunned me. It was the fact that he, the one who had hurt me, was saying it so casually. The smoldering anger I had kept buried deep inside began to flare up. "Fine, I agree to the divorce, but do you even realize what you've done?" "Oh, come on, what? You want alimony or something? Ugh, you're so greedy. But whatever. If it's just a few $1,000s, I can pay that to get rid of you." That's all I needed. I walked right past him and into the clinic.
"David, are we still on for lunch after this?" "Oh, hi, Kate. What a surprise."
My sister Sarah walked up, casually greeting David by his first name as if nothing was wrong. It all clicked in that moment. David and Sarah were having an affair, and the baby in David's arms was theirs. The baby looked to be about 6 months old, slightly older than my daughter. David had grown cool toward me during my pregnancy, and now I understood why. "Oh, so this is what's been going on. I finally get what you meant, Sarah, when you said you wouldn't steal my child. You never said you wouldn't steal my husband. You've been after him all along." My voice was eerily calm as I spoke, but inside, I was burning with fury.
"Of course. Your happiness has always belonged to me, Kate. I couldn't let you be the only one to have it. I've always been ahead of you, and I always will be. I don't even care about kids, but I do love my son. Isn't that the real answer here?"
The way she said it, like it was also obvious, left me speechless. Any anger I had was quickly fading, replaced by a hollow feeling inside.
"Sarah's right, Kate. You're not the kind of person who deserves to be happy. Sarah should have everything. She's your older sister. You should give it all to her. That's just how it is." It's the way of the world.
Sarah and David walked past me, laughing as they went, leaving me standing there numb. After they left, I felt a strange sense of calm. The divorce was inevitable, but what would I do after? I was a stay-at-home mom with no guarantee of finding a job. But maybe finally the universe was on my side.
Kate, can we talk?
Emma's voice was different this time, serious and steady. She called me out of the blue and said she has something important to discuss. That weekend, we gathered at Emma's parents' house.
Mom, Dad, I have something urgent to share.
As soon as Sarah walked into the living room, she froze, her eyes wide.
What's going on here?
David, who had also been called, stood there in shock as he took in the scene.
It's time for some answers.
Emma's voice cut through the tension like a knife, and I realized that we weren't alone. Several members of both families had gathered, Emma's parents, her uncle, and even some cousins. David slowly backed away, a nervous, trembling laugh escaping his lips.
Why is the mayor here?
The mayor was Emma's uncle, Lily's brother, who had a long family history of public service.
You didn't think I'd tell you, did you? My family has deep roots in public service, David. You should have known that before you crossed the line. You're just an employee at City Hall, but my uncle is basically your boss. And he's here to make sure justice is served.
David stood there, visibly shaking, realizing how deep in trouble he was.
Sarah, you know why you're here, right? And now, David, you get to explain yourself. What have you been doing with the child support money for Kate's daughter?
David's eyes darted nervously around the room as everyone stared at him. You've been the legal head of our household, David. I'm assuming you've been receiving the child benefits for our daughter. But you've been spending it on Sarah's baby, haven't you? David's eyes widened, but he said nothing. We're still technically married, which means Sarah has been receiving single-parent benefits, right? But that's fraud, David. You've both been claiming benefits while you live together and raise your baby like a family. Sarah didn't even flinch.
I don't see the problem. Lots of single moms have boyfriends who help them out. What's wrong with that?
The room buzzed with murmurs as the family members exchanged glances.
Actually, Sarah, that's illegal. Single-parent benefits are for those who truly have no help. If someone's supporting you, you're not eligible. It's called welfare fraud, and you can go to jail for it.
The word jail made both David and Sarah freeze. David finally broke his silence, his voice shaky.
We didn't know. We didn't mean to.
Emma's uncle, the mayor, stood up and fixed David with a hard stare.
Whether you knew or not, it doesn't matter. You've committed fraud, and as a public employee, you should have known better. This is a serious issue, and there will be consequences.
David dropped to his knees, begging for forgiveness.
It's all my fault. I told Sarah to do it because the benefits were higher this way. Please punish me, not her.
Even in his confession, David was still trying to protect Sarah, and I could feel my patience running thin. David, you'll face the consequences, not just for this fraud, but for everything else you've done. The affair, the lies, using our daughter's child benefits for another child. There's a lot you'll need to make up for. I've already consulted a lawyer, so you'll be receiving divorce papers and an official request for alimony and child support. You'll also need to repay the money you used. David's face went pale.
How am I supposed to pay all that?
You'll find a way. It's your responsibility now. For the first time in my life, I raised my voice. You don't get to escape this, David. You betrayed me as a husband, a father, and as a public servant. Whatever it takes, you'll pay. Borrow, work extra shifts, do whatever you have to. David looked like he might faint, but there was no sympathy left in me. Emma, catching my eye, gave me a reassuring nod. Then she threw some photos onto the table.
These are the proof of Sarah's infidelity. I was hired by a woman who suspected her husband was cheating, and guess what? Sarah was the other woman. I did some digging on my own, and it turns out Sarah has been seeing multiple men, not just David.
Sarah turned ghostly pale. Everyone in the room gasped. Emma's parents looked like they were going to collapse from shock. The rest of the family just shook their heads in disappointment. In that moment, Sarah's betrayal was laid bare for everyone to see. David, now realizing the depth of his mistake, turned to Sarah, his face full of panic.
Sarah? Is this true? Are you really cheating on me too? We need to get a DNA test done on the baby.
Sarah remained silent, her expression giving nothing away. But the fact she didn't deny it made the situation clearer. The doubt about whether the baby was David's seemed to confirm that the child might not even be his.
I never thought my part-time private investigation skills would end up being so useful,
Emma muttered as David glared at her.
You're a private investigator? You're the most annoying sister ever.
David's final outburst only made things worse for him.
It's too late for that, David. Your actions have shown no remorse. You'll face the consequences.
David immediately straightened up, his back stiff as if trying to regain some dignity.
No, I'm truly sorry. I'll take responsibility.
But it was far too late. The punishment awaiting him wouldn't be lenient, especially considering the scandal involving public funds and fraud. After the interrogation, I learned that David confessed to encouraging Sarah to apply for single-parent benefits even though they were living together and raising a child. Because of this, David was stripped of his position at the city office and transferred to a different department. The news of the scandal spread quickly, and soon the shame and pressure became too much for David to bear. He eventually quit his job, leaving behind the stability he had once cherished. Our divorce was finalized before he lost his job, and he managed to pay back the money he owed me through various loans. Since then, he's been living alone in a rundown apartment, struggling to make ends meet with a night job as a traffic control worker. He's reportedly being berated by a younger supervisor, a far cry from the life he once led. Sarah faced a similar downfall. Once the fraud was exposed, she returned the money and avoided jail time, but one of her friends wasn't so lucky. That friend had been cheating the system for over a decade, and thanks to Sarah's confession, she was arrested and given a suspended sentence. The friend now holds a deep grudge against Sarah, who has since disappeared from sight, fearing revenge. Rumors say Sarah now works in a shady bar, far from her previous life of luxury. Her son's paternity remains unknown, but my parents have stepped in to help raise him, and I've come to love him just as I do my own daughter. I'm committed to raising both children with love and care, ensuring they grow up without bearing the burdens of their parents' mistakes. Emma and I remain close, and although she's no longer my sister-in-law, she and her mom have become like family to me. We even have plans to take a family trip to Hot Springs soon. My life has been full of ups and downs, but now, as I look around, I realize that I've found peace and happiness in the end.